In a stark reminder of their oppressive rule, the Taliban have reintroduced brutal public punishments in Afghanistan, flouting international human rights standards. Recent reports reveal that 63 individuals, including women, were publicly flogged for various crimes, and at least 5 people were executed by gunfire. Despite initial promises of a more open and moderate rule after coming to power in 2021, the Taliban's actions have drawn parallels to their regime in the late 1990s. Over the past 2 years, Afghan women and girls have faced increasing exclusion from public life, including access to education and recreational spaces like parks and gyms. In a resurgence of harsh judicial practices, the Taliban have once again resorted to public floggings and executions, casting a shadow over human rights in Afghanistan. Recently, at least 63 people, including 14 women, were publicly flogged in northern Afghanistan after being convicted of crimes such as sodomy, theft, and immoral relations. This marks the first instance of such a large group being publicly punished by the de facto authorities since their return to power in Kabul. Since regaining control in August 2021, the Taliban have conducted public floggings in sports stadiums across the country involving hundreds of men and women. Despite initial promises of a more moderate rule, the Taliban quickly reverted to severe public punishments, including executions, floggings, and stonings, reminiscent of their previous regime in the late 1990s. The United Nations Mission for Afghanistan has decried judicial corporal punishments and executions in public under Taliban rule, saying they are prohibited under international human rights law.
There is absolutely no difference. You see, the harsh punishments and the harsh codes of behavior they have used for civil offences, offences related to sex, etc., are as harsh, as barbaric as they were in 1996 when they first came. That time it was shocking because nobody actually had seen that kind of a thing before. It lasted for 5 years and all those 5 years were shocking. What has happened is, this is Taliban part 2, where they are doing exactly the same things after promising they would not.
In March of this year, Taliban's supreme leader Hibatullah Akhundzada declared that the group would reinforce its interpretation of Sharia law in Afghanistan, reintroducing public flogging and stoning for adultery. According to Afghan Witness, a research group monitoring human rights in Afghanistan, the Taliban ordered 417 public floggings and executions last year alone. Since their return, the Taliban have severely curtailed human rights, particularly impacting women's rights, freedom of expression, and access to education and employment. Institutions supporting human rights have been drastically limited or shut down entirely. Since August 15, 2021, the country has faced ongoing uncertainty, raising fears of human rights abuses against activists, former government employees, women and minorities. A recent UNEMA report highlights over 50 decrees that restrict women's freedoms, revealing a dire situation. The report notes increased police harassment in public spaces, further limiting women's ability to leave their homes. Alarmingly, 57% of women in Afghanistan feel unsafe leaving their homes without a male guardian.
In urban Afghanistan, the informal economy always has been a large part of the economy where women have played some role. To come out with rules which prevent women from coming out unescorted by a male relative, that I think is damning for the women because their avenues of employment get eliminated, and it is damning for the overall economy because the urban economy to some extent depended on these women.
Today, most countries don't recognize the Taliban as the official government of Afghanistan. The UN has stated that recognition is nearly impossible while bans on female education and employment remain in effect. The international community's primary contention with the Taliban centers on these bans. Since seizing power, the Taliban have mandated women to cover up when leaving home, barred girls and women from attending high school and university, and banned them from parks, gyms, and public baths. The Taliban dismisses criticism as external interference, insisting these bans are domestic matters. As Afghanistan grapples with its future, the conflict between the Taliban's authoritarian rule and demands for human rights and equality persists, leaving the nation's trajectory uncertain.